Welcome back, everyone, to Fabulous After 50. Now, I called this episode The Brave Pivot, Trading Applause for Purpose. And Kate said, from musician with Grammy-winning ensembles to leadership advisor, what the arts taught me about mastery, identity, and success. So we're talking here about someone who took a big risk and pivoted into a new career at the peak of success when everybody around her was like, what are you doing? Why on earth would anyone do such a thing? So, Kate, I'm really fascinated about who you are, what you do, why you do it, and the journey which took you there. And I haven't even introduced you properly because your name is Kate Kayaian. Am I saying it properly?
Absolutely. That's wonderful.
Right. So, why don't you just launch into who you are? I already thought that was my story to start with, and then we'll get into what you're doing now and why.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm starting my day here with you. I know you're enjoying a Friday afternoon. I am calling in from Bermuda, where I have lived for the past 10, 15 years. And my story is really one about an identity shift. I was a professional cellist, not only for much of my career, for most of my life. I started the cello when I was 4.5 years old.
Gosh.
I had a crush on my best friend's older brother, and he played the cello and she played the violin. So everybody thought I was going to want to play the violin like Carla, but I knew at 4.5 years of age that one could only get married if you played the same instrument. That if I was going to marry Blake, I had to play the cello. There was no other option. And luckily, I really loved it. I was very fortunate because they moved away a year and a half or
And
so
you did
later. So
marry
that
Blake.
was, I know. And well, I definitely understood that you couldn't get married if you didn't live in the same town. So I accepted it and moved on. But I loved the cello. I was good at it. I had great teachers. I was just, how sometimes you're just born into a
Yeah,
lucky situation, and that
yeah.
could be financial, that could be socioeconomic, it could be anything. And this was that I happened to live in a community where there were incredible cello teachers and music
Right.
teachers and an incredible scene. It was outside of Chicago. And so I really excelled and had the support. And my parents scrimped and saved. They
Oh,
didn't have any money, but they just pooled whatever they could. They took on second jobs. They did everything they could to support me. And I was so grateful for it. And I continued. I knew when I was in early high school years that I wanted to be a professional cellist. There was nothing I wanted to do more than just sit and play the cello. I left school at noon every day. I had my schedule so that I could go home and practice. I went to one of the top conservatories in the United States, if not the world, New England Conservatory of Music in Boston, and went on to be a fellow at the New World Symphony in Miami, Florida. I went to Tangle. I mean, doors were opening for me. I worked my butt off. I will say
right.
that. I worked my little butt off, but I also was really supported by so many people, so many scholarships, so much
Oh,
financial aid. It really was just a path that was laid out
it
for
was like
me
a
that
flow, right?
it
Felt
was
it for
just like a
whatever
river.
reason, and then it was a
It
river.
was a river, and I wanted to be on that river. When I graduated from conservatory, there was nothing I'd rather do at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night than be on stage playing the cello. Nothing in the world. You couldn't
Mm.
entice me with anything. It's like, no, if I can be playing a concert, I want to
That's
be
where I
playing
want to
a
be.
concert. And then my career and was a bit of everything. I did a lot of teaching because I loved teaching. I loved mentoring other students like me, talented, eager, enthusiastic students. I also really loved the students who maybe didn't have the best training starting out and they were a little behind, but I could tell they had the passion and the enthusiasm. I loved creating success stories.
For them, right?
Exactly. I loved that. I loved exploring their potential because I could see it in them. I could see,
Mm.
like, no, I know you have it in you. You just, at some point, you were told you weren't good enough or you thought you weren't good enough, and you are. And I can see that you want to, and you're telling me that you want to. And that will come full circle later. But that was a really important part of my career was teaching. In addition to performing, I got to travel all over the world and play in some really interesting places with some wonderful colleagues. I had it all. I remember in one spring, I went to Mexico, I was in Africa, I was in Morocco, I was in India, yeah, I was in the Middle East, I was in the Mediterranean.
My
And my brother,
goodness.
I was talking to my brother who was not a musician, and he said, God, he said, I work my job so that I can afford to travel to those places. And he's like, and you go because other people are paying you to be there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, yeah, you got to have fun for the first 18 years of your life when I was,
Yeah,
practicing.
that's true. That is true. Because I was thinking you really are a beautiful person as well, because no time do you sound as if you took stuff for granted or were conceited because of your talent, and that you always seem to think, I have been lucky, I am grateful. How can I help others have that same luck? But you do have a good point there. I mean, I guess there wasn't a normal childhood, adolescence,
No,
student years. There was none of these
no. And
days
that
of
was
night. You were studying, you were working.
right. And that was a big part of my identity of like, no,
Mm,
Kate can't do that because she's practicing. I wasn't allowed to go to prom because I had a big
mm.
competition the next morning. Even my friends knew like there was a big party. I couldn't go because I had orchestra the next morning or I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
concert the next day. And it was how everybody introduced me. This is Kate,
yeah.
cellist. This is my friend Kate, the cellist. This is my student Kate, the cellist. This is my sister Kate, the cellist. It was just 100% part of who I was. And I will say, thank you for the compliment, but it is very easy to be humble and be full of humility as a
Right.
musician because there are always hundreds of people better than you, more talented than you, more dedicated than you, with
Right.
a bigger career. And we are all just doing what we love. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, to be a performer and I think an artist of any kind is to chase that perfection, that idea of perfection. And at the same time, we know that that is an unachievable goal. Nobody
But
can
you still
can
try, right?
get to
Each time.
perfect.
Yeah.
The joy of what we do and also the horror of what we do is in that chase for
Yeah.
perfection. And it's something that's always interested me. I have this wonderful career that I'm so grateful for and I love it and I'm having the time of my life. And at some point in my mid 30s, I was starting to feel like there was something else for me.
Mm.
Just
But
this
you've never really
nagging
had a
toe.
choice.
No, people would ask me, it was a common question when I would do a Q&A before and after a concert. Somebody was always asked, why did you go into music? Why did you become a cellist? And I would answer tongue in cheek as a joke, like, well, I don't know how to do anything else.
Mm.
In a certain sense, I felt like that was true.
Mm.
Now, post pivot, I've learned like, oh no, actually, I've been accumulating all of these other skills along the
Mm.
way. And,
Mm.
people say if you don't know what to do, go back to your childhood, you're going to see
Exactly.
clues. I loved to write as a kid. My mother is a librarian, and so she got some professional development funds to take a bookbinding class. And
Oh.
she would take my stories and she would bind them into these little books.
Oh.
And she always said, she was in full support of my being a cellist. But every once in a while, she would say, are you sure you don't want to be a writer?
Mm.
And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm a cellist.
No.
Where is this coming from? Every once in a while, are you
No.
sure you don't? You're such a good writer. And I love to write, but I was just writing
Oh
my
no.
English assignments or my little journal that we all, we had a little diary with a lock on the side. Like we all had that. Didn't everybody write in a diary every day? Turns out no, but I thought
Mm.
everybody was doing this. I would write my essays that had been assigned to me, right? I was just doing my homework. And she, as an adult, was reading them saying, like,
Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
these are really
Yeah.
good, actually. So she saw something in me that I didn't know until later. I mean, I work on that craft as well. I hope that every day I'm getting better. But yeah, in my mid 30s, I really started to feel like this beloved jacket that I had. I just pictured this gorgeous suede jacket that was my pride and joy, and I had loved it for decades. And I woke up one day and it just didn't fit. It just felt a little tight. And that's what my career and my life was feeling like.
Well, this has been very confusing because
It
after
was
having,
very
not have a
confusing.
single doubt in your mind from the age of 4 or whatever, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And most of us still don't know in our 50s exactly what it is that we want to do or are meant to do.
Right.
But, to have that, it's like, wow, to really know and pursue that path and make it happen as well. But at the same time, I guess you're also very aware of all the sacrifices everybody's made for you to get there, and that you feel a bit like, but I can't let them down. And what do I mean? It doesn't fit, that it doesn't
It was
feel
very
good. Must
complicated.
be
It was
very confusing.
very confusing, very complicated because yes, at the same time, that was a running theme of all of those scholarships, all of the
Yeah,
financial aid,
yeah,
all of the support, all of the doors that people went out of their way to open for me, everything my parents had
yeah,
sacrificed. And like, my brother would have gone on a lot more vacations in his life if I hadn't
yeah,
played the cello. Like, I felt bad for
yeah,
him. I think my parents ended up buying him a house in order to even things out later,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, but at the same time, it was tiny little things. I would play a recital and I always loved performing. I loved the music. There was never a point where I thought, I hate doing this. There was no tragic event, there was no crisis. I just remember I was playing a recital one day and it went really well, and people are applauding me. And I'm taking a bow, and afterwards, people come backstage and want to congratulate me and chat with me and get autographs. And I remember thinking, God, this is really about my ego. So much of this is,
Mm.
yes, of course, I want to share this great music. Yes, of course, I want to touch their hearts in some way. I want to give them that as a gift. That's why we perform. At the same time, I want to play really well so that people think I'm good, so
Yeah,
that people
I get you.
respect me as
Yeah.
a cellist. And so the louder they clap, if I get a standing
Mm.
ovation, wow, they thought I was really great. I'm going to get a great review. Whatever it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
it
yeah.
suddenly occurred to me that one day how much of what I was doing was just wrapped up in my own ego. And that felt horrible. And like I said, you could look at it the other way and say, like, well, okay, but so much of what I was doing was a gift and was
And
the
yeah,
thing.
and it was, and you were creating beauty for other people, getting
Right.
them in touch with their feelings. That's true, but I get what you're saying. When it's especially at that level, and at each time, you're measuring it against the time before. Oh, they're
Yeah.
clapping less. Oh, did I lose it, or am
Yeah.
I not good enough at that part? There is that constant, and it is you, right? It's not
Yeah.
you are participating to a whole.
I mean, I played with some big ensembles as well.
Hmm,
Boston
hmm.
Modern Orchestra project, big Grammy Award winning group. Was very proud of that as well. But I was more proud if I had a big cello solo in a
Hmm.
concert with them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that felt, it was just sort of, it kind
A
of,
bit off.
it grabbed my attention. And at the same time, I was feeling like I think there's more I could do. I was feeling this entrepreneurial tug. And as a kid, looking for clues from your childhood, there was one summer that this music camp came up at the last minute. And I grew up outside of Chicago. This was in Indiana. It was a drive away, but would have required a hotel stay, the fees for the workshop.
Yeah.
And it was kind of last minute. All my friends were going, and my parents said, you can't go. We can't afford it. It wasn't in our budget. Our budget's maxed out. We're sending you to these other camps, but you can't do this one. And I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and I was so mad. And I was so upset at my parents who just couldn't make enough money to let me do what my friends were doing. I also grew up in a very affluent neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, that makes,
My dad
yeah.
worked in a
You're
hardware store.
always
My mom was a
comparing.
librarian, right? And so I was like, it's their fault. And I said, well, if they can't make money to support me, I'll do it. And I started a little camp in my backyard for all of the little neighborhood kids. And I would read them stories, and we would make puppets like out of pipe cleaners and brown sandwich, lunch sacks. And it was so basic, but these parents just paid me a ton of money. And I was like, well, that's cool. I just had an idea and I did
Wow.
it and I made
So
some
you were
money.
entrepreneurial and you
I was
realized you liked that.
entrepreneurial. I was the
Yeah.
kid who, friends would come over and they'd say, oh, do you want to play with the dollhouse? And I'd be like, no, let's make friendship bracelets and sell them on the sidewalk, right? There was always, and it wasn't just about the money. It was just about like our
Yeah.
ability to create something
Yeah.
and put it out there. I was intrigued. And so that started coming back to me of like, I wanted to start a program, a project. I wasn't sure what it was. And I just started following it. I started taking some business classes. I was conducting an orchestra at a school, and I started helping out in the admissions department just because I felt like learning that process was going to be helpful to me.
Yeah.
The headmaster at the school called me and he's like, listen, we're thrilled if you want to do this, but why? It's like, you
Yeah.
have a whole career. Why do you want to spend extra hours doing something that has nothing to do with music? And I told him, I said, I don't know, but I just have a feeling that these skills could help me someday. I was thinking maybe, when I retired from the stage, if I wanted to start a music school. But I
Yeah.
started collecting these skills, took some online marketing classes and advertising classes and copywriting classes, all of those things. And then, Julie, I played a concert March 13th, 2020. It was here in Bermuda. We knew it had been announced that starting the
Oh, yeah.
next day,
Yeah.
everything was locked down.
Yeah.
I knew that all of my concerts were going to be
COVID, right?
canceled.
Yeah.
Everything was canceled. My big concert tour on the West Coast was going to be canceled. And I felt nothing but relief. I was like, this is my opportunity.
Wow. Yeah.
And I do think people ask me all the time, like, if that hadn't happened, would I still
Would
be a
you?
cellist? I don't think so. I think I was like, I was
Hmm.
on a different river at that point, right? I had branched
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
but it was like sort of just like that. Okay, here's a sabbatical. And I said, I'm going to give myself 6 months. Nobody's going to question it because nobody's playing
Yeah.
concerts.
Exactly.
And I, within 2 weeks, was starting an online cello festival, the first online festival of its kind. And now there are tons, even now that
Ah,
things are in person. I was making money. I made $65,000 on that festival.
goodness. Yeah.
And it was a huge success. The students loved it. They got so much out of it. My fellow teachers that I brought in got so much out of it. They're the top cellists in the world came in to teach because their summers were canceled too.
Yes.
And a lot of them said, Kate, everybody teaches, right? Everybody teaches at a conservatory or university. And they said, they let us all go early in the spring, but we know that I'm going to have to start teaching online in the fall. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Like so many
Right.
weren't really
And
that savvy in this.
they said, I don't know how to teach on Zoom. I don't know how to use a microphone. I got a bunch of these. I had a sound engineer friend who hooked me up with a contact, and I sent out USB microphones to all of the students, all of the teachers, and they were like, this is great. I've got
Mm-hmm.
7 weeks to learn how to do this really well. So it was a big success. And so my colleagues started coming to me saying, like, hey, can you help me? And so that's how I
And so a
started
business was
coaching.
born, right? So a whole different like side career was born out of necessity.
Out of necessity.
Something
And
bad.
that's what it's all about. Generally my clients are people who see some sort of gap.
Right.
They're creators of some kind and they're like, they need to write this book, they need to launch this project or this program, and I help them do that. So that's my coaching side of my career. But when I was in the midst of this pivot, the few years before COVID hit, when I knew I wanted to do something else, but I didn't know what, I felt like I wanted to give up my performing career, but everybody was telling me I couldn't, that I was
Mm.
crazy. Why would I do that? Everybody had a different thing, like, oh, you're just burnt out. I knew I was
Yeah.
not
Oh, yeah.
burnt out.
Yeah.
I still loved it. I just
Oh,
wanted to
it's a
do something
midlife.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's midlife. Like, no, it's not. It's what was it? Oh, I just needed to be playing bigger and better concerts. And I was like, no, for most of my life, there was nowhere I'd rather be at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night than on
Yeah.
stage. Suddenly, I had a lot of places I'd rather be. Suddenly, I was thinking of all of my cousins' weddings that I didn't get to go to,
Yeah.
all of the family photos, the family reunions where I look back at the photos and I'm just not in them.
And the thing is that to come back to the word identity you would use, that had become solely your identity. I
Solely
mean,
my
yes, you are
identity.
a cellist player, probably will be a cellist player forever. It's something that you do and enjoy. But that's not all.
Hmm.
You're also so many other people rather than
Hmm.
just a cellist. A cellist is also something that you do, right? Okay, it's a different sort of doing than being marketing director or something else. When you say, yeah, but who are you as a person? It is, I think, probably more linked than it is in a corporate world because music is very much, you have to put your heart and soul in it as well. But
Right.
still, it is something that you do, but it cannot just be who you are.
And it's interesting that you bring that up because that identity, that connection to what I do and who I am and how you're introduced. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody at a get together just a couple weeks ago introduced me. Now, he doesn't know me all that well. And one of the few times he met me, I did play the cello
Hmm.
for a fundraising event. I'll do those chamber music for fundraisers. I'll still do. But he introduced me to somebody and said, Kate, she's a cellist. I was like, I almost laughed. I'm like, no, I'm
Mm,
not. I'm not
mm,
a
mm.
cellist. And so really but going through that process when I had
Yeah.
decided I did not want to be a cellist, but I didn't have any evidence of what I was now, right? I
Yeah.
felt like I wanted to write more, but I hadn't published my book, right? This didn't
Mm,
exist yet.
mm.
And so if you say, oh, I'm a writer, people say, oh, what have you written?
They're like, well, I'm working on
Nothing.
something. Yes.
Like, I'm a podcast. Oh, what's your podcast called? Oh, I haven't done any episodes yet, right? Like all of those things or that sort of in between. I felt navigating that was really difficult. And I didn't have any resources. I couldn't find a book to read. I couldn't find articles to read. I listened to so many podcasts and watched so many YouTube, and they just didn't exist back then. And so that's why I wrote my book, Beyond Potential, as
Yeah,
a
and I mean,
way.
let's talk about that now because, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you because,
No.
so, okay, we've had your absolutely amazing background, and I think all in different levels of success, let's say, we can all identify with something that we've done or something that we then thought was who we are, and then got to a phase where we're thinking, it doesn't bring me that joy anymore. There's something missing and confused and never having really asked ourselves the right questions. So you took yourself then through this process on your own, or you had someone who helped you find out what is it then that's wrong? What is it that you would rather do? And how do you go about doing that when everything has been focused on cello, right?
Yeah.
Everything. There has been any sideways. There's been no room for other activities apart from the writing, which you say did give you pleasure, but was mostly answering either assignments or our diary. So, I mean, what advice would you have to people? Is this something that you coach now as well?
Mhm.
In short, now you're a writer. I do want to talk about Beyond Potential, of course. You coach this as well to help people find where they are at.
Yes, I have two group programs. I have the Creatives Leadership Academy, where I teach people the business skills that they would need to launch a project. And then I have the Creators Leadership Mastermind, which is just starting this fall, which is for creators who want the support to see their project through, right? They have the idea, they're trying to write the book, they just haven't published it, they haven't moved forward. So I help people launch those projects. And I coach one-on-one. And that's what was another interesting part of the process is as I was starting to coach my first couple of clients and realizing like, oh, I feel as at home doing this as I felt on stage.
Mm.
I loved it so much and I needed some testimonials for my new website, right? And I didn't have a ton of clients, but I was like, well, I have tons of cello students throughout the years. And I went back and
You
pulled out,
mentored them, right? Coaching is coaching.
well, I was like, maybe there's something from a thank you note after they graduated or something that I can pull. And I'm just reading this pile of cards and notes from former students, and they all say the same thing. You were more than a cello teacher. You were a mentor. You were a guide. You helped me live my best life. You helped me see my full
See?
potential. And I was like, oh, I've been doing this forever.
And that's what you're saying as well, isn't it? It's that the signs are there. We don't think so because it's something that we do in order to fill out what we think is our identity. So in order, as a cellist, you were doing the mentoring, and as somebody who'd been given a lot, you wanted to give back, but you didn't see those as actually, skills which are careers in themselves, very much so.
Absolutely. And so that was a nice little gift, right? To see that, yeah, it's a learnable skill. It's something that it's a craft. Coaching is a
Yes,
craft that I have
yes,
studied,
yes.
but knowing that, oh, it's a craft that I have been naturally drawn to my whole
Right.
life.
Yes.
It's
And
really
that you're
part.
innately good at, right? When we do our coaching studies, we're taught, a lot more of the tools and certain, more strong lines of how to behave, how to listen, and a set of how to formulate questions, that sort of thing. But still, I think most of us who do become coaches, there has always been a part of us which has been
Mhm.
curious about how other people are doing and who have empathy and who listen and have creative ideas about, what about this or what about that, or have you thought of this, or, that sort of thing. So you write and
Mhm.
you coach. And I mean,
Mhm.
I know you are still involved with music. You're part of the Philharmonic.
Yeah, so I'm the president and the music director slash conductor of the Bermuda Philharmonic
Right. Well, that's
Society.
also fantastic, isn't it? That you
It's
still
so
keep that
fun.
there.
It's
And
so
so your
fun.
book, what is the book about? So Beyond Potential.
Beyond Potential, it's called a guide for creatives who want to reassess, redefine, and reignite their careers. And the re is meant it's separated by a hyphen, which is not grammatically correct, but it's very intentional
That's it.
because
Yeah.
it's for people who we've assessed our stories, we've defined ourselves, we've ignited careers, But this is an opportunity to do it again. And the idea is that we are constantly evolving as humans. And I think, especially, I'm in my 50s, your listeners are all fabulous after 50. I think when we were growing up, there's that idea of you go to school and you learn a skill, or you just sort of choose a lifestyle. Maybe that's a stay-at-home mom, parent, and you
And you do
choose
it.
that and you do it. And then you retire and you go play golf or travel or hang out with the grandchildren, right? And I think things have changed
I
in the
agree.
past couple of decades where we're living longer, we have more vitality later in the
Really?
years, and there's opportunities to do
Yeah.
a second career or to pivot
Yeah.
or to change and to
Right.
think about things differently. And I found in all of my reading, you asked me, if I had coaching. I had a business coach when I was putting together my festival at the time, and she's wonderful. But I was listening to podcasts, I was reading every book I could, just looking desperately for this information. And I got it in bits and pieces. And I was like, there needs to be one book that can
Yeah.
help somebody do this. And I found that a lot of the books started at part two of like, okay, just decide what you want to
Yeah.
do and put the pieces
Go
in
for
place.
it.
And then there were time management and
Mm.
productivity tips to get it done. And I said, you know what, we have to start before that. And we have to look at why we don't think we can make this pivot, what's been holding us
And
back.
that's where we all get stuck.
That's where we
That
all
is
get
where we get
stuck.
stuck. Yeah.
You
And
decide, you
trying
wake
to
up and you're
work
like,
out what's us from what parents told us we would be, because
mhm,
we are that generation. I mean, nowadays it is a lot more open. There are so many different sorts of jobs and ways of working that we didn't even know existed back then. So
mhm,
it is all a lot more fluid regarding what you do. It doesn't need to be a job for life. You can work
right,
anywhere all over the world. It's not you in your little village sort of thing. It's changed tremendously, but we were not given those skills back then. We were told
correct.
more or less, okay, you need to get a job and you need security, and then you
Mhm,
need a husband, and then you have your children, and whether you work on the side or not, whatever. But then we suddenly wake up and think, maybe we've had that splendid career. And we've also thought, well, okay, been there, seen there, done it. I'm 58. There's a lot of years I could potentially still be living. What do I want to be
absolutely.
doing for the next 40 or whatsoever?
And somebody might say, you know what? I feel I want to start writing some poetry. And they're just drawn to writing poetry
Mhm.
or writing whatever. But then they have this nagging, they're like, no, I couldn't do that. I couldn't
Yeah,
do
and there are
that.
too many people out there, and who's going to read my
Yeah.
thing, and blah, blah.
And if you really do these exercises in the book, it's not therapy. People who are dealing with massive trauma, they need a professional to help them through those things. But this is more about the why do I think I can't do? Oh, you know what? Because I took that English class when I was 14 and I failed my poetry assignment,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, that was one assignment, right?
It
And
was
one
one
teacher who
assignment and
collected
maybe
that
something was
assignment.
going on in your life, or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
your
Or
teacher
maybe they
hated,
didn't like your style. Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And it could be anything. And they're not traumatic events. They're just sort of
Yes,
like
I know.
hiccups that we just sort of like take along as we go through life. And like maybe your friends teased you of like, oh, yeah,
Yes.
you're no poet, right? Like, but they stay with us. And so that the first part of my book is just taking a look at those things. And of course, nobody has time to take a look at every single story that has ever happened to them that they're carrying. But we
You
decide
do.
what
I think
we,
if you really step out, you do see the lines more than you know, right?
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's funny, things that we've been absolutely oblivious to. If you're coached in the right way or read the right book or whatsoever, you suddenly start thinking. I remember thinking, my life's a total explosion of countries and jobs, and all over. There's hardly anything I haven't done. And I was
right.
really getting a little bit tired with myself. This was back 10 or so years. And then I said, I'm taking myself away for New Year. And everybody was like, don't do that. You'll be depressed on your own on New Year's Eve and all that. And I thought, I want to be alone. And I just sat for 5 days. A lovely friend lent me her flat in the south of Spain. And I just sat for 5 days without any having pushing about it. And things, I started scribbling left, right, and center.
Yeah,
And then the next, I'd sleep on it and maybe wake up on it. And then I'd scribble some more. And by the end of the 5 days, I'd found my red thread. My
yeah,
red thread, it was just two words. which were the main focus in everything that I was doing, even if it seemed totally unconnected. But there was this connection and communication part of in everything, connecting to yourself and connecting to others. And same thing,
Yeah.
communicate. Well, it didn't really matter if I was teaching, if I was editing, if I was holding conferences. It was all about helping people get their messages through in the way that they intended to and getting the result that they wanted. So I think that is a beautiful way, but it's very hard to do on our own. I think I was a bit lucky, but also because I'd studied as a coach and as I'd been a management consultant for years, so also very much the procedural thing. And that did
Mhm.
help me ask myself the right questions. But
Yes.
otherwise, I think the hardest part by far is working out who are we and what actually does make us happy
Yeah.
now or for the
Yeah.
next few. And we might change again. So it is reassessing. We reassess.
I was going to
Yeah.
say one of the basis of the book was a story that I heard on a podcast of, oh, you die and you go to heaven, and the first person you meet when you get to heaven is the version of you that has done all of the things you want to do.
Hmm.
And when I heard that story, it stopped me in my tracks because I realized that person wasn't a cellist. It was big things like that person isn't a cellist. That version of me that did all of
Yes.
the things I want to do is not a cellist. That version of me fixed their crooked tooth, right? But I was like, oh man,
Yeah,
if I met that person and she had
yeah,
straight teeth, I'd be so
yeah,
mad. Like, I'd be like, didn't
yeah,
I just get Invisalign?
yeah.
It's
Why
so
didn't I just
simple.
do it?
Why didn't I just do it?
Yeah,
Why didn't I just run the marathon or the half
yeah,
marathon or the 5K? Why didn't I
yeah,
get the dog? Why didn't I? And
yeah.
so I think that's a really powerful exercise that I
Exactly.
have the readers go through of just go through that exercise.
Yeah,
It's
in
just
a
an
fun and
exercise.
playful way, right? Exactly. We're forcing yourself to think we're way, 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 way over time, but that doesn't matter.
Okay.
I will put down your beyond potential in the notes. What about
Fantastic.
3 tips for people who are listening to this and who are thinking, oh gosh, I know how she feels or how she felt back then. I'm feeling like that now.
Yeah.
Okay, they can go and find a coach and maybe contact you. And yes, they can get your book by all means. But what 3 tips would you have to share? Just like that.
I would say go through that exercise is tip number one. What are the things that matter to me that secretly I want to do that I haven't been doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then follow the thread. As you said, like follow your curiosity. If you're like, I don't know, why do I suddenly want to make a chocolate souffle? Like, what does that matter? I don't know. Go find a
Yeah.
recipe, follow that thread. And then I would say, t teach yourself the yes if mentality. And the yes if mentality is it's a crucial thing in your life because so often when we have a new idea, we want to try something, we immediately say, well, no, because. No, because I don't have time. No, because I don't have money. No, because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
That's not what I do, whatever. No, because people will laugh at me. And I want you to change that with yes, if. Yes, if I asked my friend to watch the kids for a few hours. Yes, if I woke up an hour earlier each morning. Yes, if I took on a second job, a seasonal job, just to raise that extra couple $1,000s, I could afford that class, that writing class, right? What would it take?
Thinking
And
possibilities then, is it?
yeah, it
Instead
opens
of
up all the
knocking yourself
possibilities.
down.
And it could be like, yes, if I was able to raise $2 million in the next 5 days, like, okay, if that's what it
Just
would
write it down.
take,
Yeah, yeah.
write it down and then ask yourself, like, okay, could I raise $2 million in 5 days? Like, yes, if I had access to, and
Hmm,
it
hmm.
might not be possible this time around, but it teaches you what you do
Yes.
need to start getting in place. And 9 times out of 10, it is possible. You can do
Hmm.
it. You just get up the hour earlier, you start writing that poetry. And I think that we stop ourselves before we
Yeah,
even get
we
started by,
definitely do. We do. We don't give ourselves permission to even
yeah,
dream. We're a bit like, come on, I'm going to be 59. That'd be silly.
yeah,
No.
yeah. And then the third tip I would say is avoid rocking chair tasks. Once you decide that you want to get started on something, I always say that you can move forward on a project in big leaps, right? You can just say, I want to start writing. I'm going to apply for an MFA. I'm going to get a
Right.
degree in writing, creative writing. You can do it in little steps of like, well, I'm just going to write a little bit every day. Okay. Those work too. You'll get to the same point
End,
eventually.
yeah.
But rocking chair tasks are like you're sitting in a rocking chair. You think you're moving,
Oh,
but you're
yeah.
not.
Okay.
It's the equivalent
Oh,
of I'll start writing, I'm looking for the perfect
mm.
planner.
The excuse each time.
I
Start
gotta
writing
sharpen,
when
yeah.
I.
Even more than that, it's okay, it's my hour to write, and I'm gonna sharpen all of my pencils because this is important. I couldn't possibly write like, well, I can't possibly get clients until I have the perfect logo and,
Right,
the
right.
perfect
Yeah, yeah,
website. It's the
yeah,
the little things that don't
yeah,
actually matter that are just
yeah.
procrastination
Oh,
tactics.
those are strong. Those are strong. Kate, thank you very much. I mean, I hope to have you back some other time because you are absolutely fascinating. But
Love
for
it.
today, this is more than enough. And I think you have very much inspired people to move out of the no, but I'm too old, no, but, I can't possibly do that. And have a look at the yes, if, to really look at making it happen. And it's worth it. I mean, I don't think, your example of that exercise of meeting that person in heaven is, I remember the Stephen Covey when I was doing my coaching degree has an exercise a bit similar, but you're walking down a church and there's lots of people you recognize, and at the top you see a coffin and
Yep.
somebody's lying in there, and you walk up,
Mhm.
and what do
Yes.
three people say about you? Somebody who works with you,
Yeah.
a family member, and a friend.
It's
And
a
I
great exercise. I
realized
reference it in my book too. Yeah,
I
great.
realized they would not say what I wanted them to take from me. They would say I was busy, I was always running around, I always had 8 million ideas, I never really listened. And that's when I really thought, that's not what I want them to say. I do not want them to say I had the most crazy mother, she never sat still. I thought, yes, okay, I want them to say I had a mother who never took no for an answer, who followed her heart, who was a bit of a rebel, but not in a way where it seems to not be giving something in particular. And
Yeah,
those are good ways. And we do not want to, if we say, well, the end is coming closer than it is for somebody who's 10, we think, we still don't want to be lying there with those sorts of regrets,
no,
because those are ones which could easily have been lived. And our life deserves to be
absolutely.
lived. And we deserve to listen to our dreams and all of who we can become, right?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful way to put it, Julie. I love it.
Thank you very much. And please come back.
Thank you for
Take
having me
care.
today.
Bye bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.